Well, that's probably in the beginning the most important decision that an owner will make. The considerations can start with, first and foremost, exposure to liability, because whenever you are in business, either for yourself or with others, and you have either an ownership interest or you are in a position of power within that particular business entity, then you have legal exposure. And the question is whether or not you can limit legal exposure to yourself personally, and if so, what's the best way to do that? So if you go in and you start a business and you want to be a sole proprietor and you want to be the president and the vice president and all that, but you really don't set up anything formally through the state, and someone comes along and sues the business, you are the business because you're the sole proprietor. If you have it incorporated or formed an LLC, and if you're just with a partner, you've done some type of partnership agreement, that does not eliminate the exposure to personal liability. So that's kind of the first thing that I look for is the best way to limit possible exposure to personal liability, so that if the business is sued, or if there's a judgment or if there's a settlement, that is against the business and not against the person that is mainly involved with that business. Then there are tax consequences. Now, I am not a tax lawyer, so I advise my clients to seek the advice of their accountant and to also seek the advice of a tax attorney. They have specialties called LLMs. If there are significant tax issues that might be available. Now, there's some basic things that I can talk to people about in regard to the tax implications of certain business organizations in regard to either a C corporation or an S corporation and an LLC, which are really the kind of the standard ones in Florida that people form to limit their exposure. And then a lot of people form S corporations to also help with their taxes versus a C corporation. But there are some limitations on S corporations that a lot of people don't think about, and that is it limits the number of owners that you can have. It limits the fact that the business has to be owned by a domestic person and not a foreign person. And there are some other limitations as well. If you have a C corporation or an S corporation, you're able to sell stocks to entice investors or venture capitalists that want to put money in. With an LLC, you have to do it a little bit differently, and it's a little trickier, but there are some advantages to that as well. So the first thing you have to do is to figure out what kind of business the person wants, how to limit the exposure. Most tax questions I defer off to a tax professional, but those are certainly need to be explained before there's any kind of decision made on what kind of entity is going to be organized. And then there are some other minor considerations that go into that as well, depending on the type of business that you run and the type of practice that you have. But mainly exposure and tax consequences are the two biggest issues.